crush death.
Microphone check, microphone check. Microphone check. All right. Well, we're going to be starting this off right. I got the episode right here as it says in the title and description. Let it play now. For now. Okay. Just going to be testing the audio.
Who fought, led, and saved a South Vietnamese battalion from being completely overrun and obliterated. Colonel Reeder flew his Cobra attack helicopter to support Major Duffy. And that was before. Special Forces Major John Duffy, Medal of Honor recipient who fought, led, and saved a South Vietnamese battalion from being completely overrun and obliterated. Special Forces Major John Duffy, Medal of Honor recipient who fought, led, and saved a South restrictions and eventually forced to march 200 miles on the Ho Chi Minh Trail to Hanoi, where he spent months in Hanoi Hill prison camp before finally being released on March 27, 1973, and he detailed that experience in his book, Through the Valley, My Captivity in Vietnam. And Colonel Reeder has been on this podcast twice before, episode 63, where we discussed his book, Through the Valley, and his war raged. It had been raging for some time. I arrived in the country in the middle of the night on Halloween 1968. I was young, a 22-year-old newly promoted U.S. Army captain, eager to find my manhood, to learn what I was made of. I was anxious over the explosive light displays I'd seen in the distance as our World Airways flight abruptly dropped into a steep, spiraling approach, landing at Ben Hoa Air Base just outside Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam. As I walked toward the military bus there to pick us up, I noted with some concern the heavy-gauge wire mesh across the windows. Our escort told us it was to prevent anyone from throwing grenades through the windows as we drove down narrow streets on our way to Long Binh Army Post a few miles northwest. Welcome to the combat zone, I thought. Little did I know how far this was from the reality of war I'd soon come to know. I'd heard the unit I was going to, the 131st, flew special, highly classified missions, some of the most hazardous in Southeast Asia. Many of its aircraft had been shot down far behind enemy lines. Only a few crew members ever recovered. General Westmoreland, the commander of all forces in Vietnam, authorized the black flight suit for the aviators, the only Army unit in Vietnam given that honor. And that right there is an excerpt from a book called We Dared to Fly, Dangerous Secret Missions During the Vietnam War, written by retired Army Colonel William Reeder Jr. This is the third book written by Colonel Reeder. He wrote another book called Extraordinary Valor, about Special Forces Major John Duffy, Medal of Honor recipient who fought, led, and saved a South Vietnamese battalion from being completely overrun and obliterated. And Colonel Reeder flew his Cobra attack helicopter in support of Major Duffy. And that was before Colonel Reeder was shot down over the central highlands of Vietnam, was captured by the North Vietnamese, placed in a jungle prison camp, was starved, tortured, beaten, subjected to mock executions, and eventually forced to march 200 miles on the Ho Chi Minh Trail to Hanoi, where he spent months in the Hanoi Hilton prison camp before finally being released on March 27, 1973. And he detailed that experience in his book, Through the Valley, My Captivity in Vietnam. And Colonel Reeder has been on this podcast twice before. Episode 63, where we discussed his book, Through the Valley, and his experience as a prisoner of war. And then on episode 342, where we talked about his book, Extraordinary Valor. It is an honor to have one of my heroes back again, Colonel Reeder, to discuss his latest book, We Dared to Fly, which describes his first tour in Vietnam, flying harrowing missions over Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia in the Grumman OV-1 Mohawk observation and attack airplane. Colonel Reeder, thank you for coming back. It's great to see you, and an honor for you to come back and talk to us one more time.
Jocko, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
You kind of wrote these books in reverse order, right? How'd that happen?
Oh, there's definitely a story behind that. So many things. The first book that I wrote, Through the Valley, My Captivity in Vietnam, was about my prisoner of war experience. I was really driven to write that, motivated to write it, because I felt there was an important story to be told about my prisoner of war experience, but even more than mine, to use my story to get the account out of the entire southern experience, prisoners who were captured in South Vietnam. Most of the information, most of the books written, most of the publicity about the prisoners of war when we came home dealt with those guys shot down and captured in North Vietnam. The Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps fighter and bomber pilots who went down there, moved immediately into the prison system in the north, and then eventually finding their way to one of the major prisons like the Hanoi Hilton. There have been very few accounts of what happened to those others who were captured in the South. So I thought that was an important story to tell. I wrote my account. I tried to, well, in each of my books, but this one particularly, to include the story of the other prisoners who were captured in the South, what they endured for much longer than I did, until their release. I got the manuscript written, and then I found that writing is a difficult chore, but that's only half the project. Once you get the manuscript written, you have to find someone who's going to publish it, or you can self-publish. I mean, a lot of people do that, but I really wanted to find a reputable publishing house to publish my book. That took about another year. Eventually, I got connected with the Naval Institute Press, and they published the first book. So that was done. That was out. Now, in my story of my captivity, I start with my arrival at Vietnam and on my second tour of duty, and go through the deteriorating situation as the Easter Offensive of 1972 erupted, and then how I eventually found myself, and I was in harm's way every day, but particularly horrendous battle on May 9th, 1972, that I got shot down and captured. In laying out that account from my arrival at the end of December until getting shot down in May, I described this deteriorating situation and some of the battles that I was involved in that led up to that. Some of them pretty hairy battles. One took place at a location called Firebase Charlie on Rocket Ridge. I shared that in my first book. It takes about, a few paragraphs, no more than a page and a half. As in all my work, I'm trying to get my facts as absolutely correct as I can. Dust off my old memories, all those many years long ago, sure I've got them right. So in trying to describe, real briefly, that Firebase Charlie, I talked to this one recommendation I really want to detail and define the fact that very materials on the ground. There's the Italian, which, and as I found out, found advisor John Duffy, I found out that battle was even more horrendous than I thought. That the War Battalion went into that fight with 471 South Vietnamese paratroopers and their one single American advisor, Special Forces Major John Duffy. 2 weeks of battle, 310 days at the end, 36 paratroopers to survive, and Duffy to get off of that hill and get rescued. Duffy wounded 5 times during the battle. So that was pretty spectacular. Now, talking to John Duffy over many times to get those facts right, he started dropping hints. And if you come to know John, you'll understand this. He said, "Hey, that was really a big battle, a very significant battle. We really know as much about that battle. Someone ought to write the history of Firebase Starling." So he said, "Oh, finally, John, I got it. I'll do this. Do something 12 to 20 page monograph. Fast. Here, John, look, you got the history of the Battle of Firebase Starling." But as I started researching, talking to him, talking to the senior surviving Vietnamese officers who had made it to the United States, and he had assumed command in the middle of the battle when the battalion commander got killed and felling, there was a story to be told. So I started taking notes, interviewing people, doing archival research, and then ended up with the book Extraordinary Valor, the second book that I wrote.
That book's phenomenal. And, we covered that book on podcast 342. It's, like you said, it's such an insane battle.
Yep.
And the amount of detail that you have, and I remember you talked about it last time you were on the podcast, you were able to sit down with some of these survivors and pull out battle maps, go through the terrain and talk through, so you have detail. And there's recording, radio call, coming from Major Duffy, and calling the aircraft in. It's just incredible. And obviously, when you were on the podcast, he was just awarded his Distinguished Service Cross was upgraded to the Medal of Honor. Is finally, after however many 30 or 40 or whatever 50 years, it got upgraded, and he received the Medal of Honor. It's awarded
for that battle. It was the timing was interesting. That book was not the reason he got the Medal of Honor, because the book was at work. The Medal of Honor was already approved, but the book was published in July of 2022. On July 5th, he was standing in the White House getting the Medal of Honor hung around his neck. The privilege, the honor to be invited to join him at the White House. That was extraordinary. But yeah, so I got that book written and thought that I was probably done with my publishing career, which I had never set out to become any kind of an author other than get that first Vietnam POW book, which led to that. And the same thing with that. I got the manuscript done. Naval Institute Press was not. They wanted to publish it, but didn't like the narrative style that I incorporated in the book. I recreated a lot of dialogue just to make it an interesting story. But the dialogue is true to the memories of the guys that I interviewed, and true to my recollections. That was okay in my memoir. I particularly wanted to have this next book. They told me, they said, if you'll just some of that narrative, it's more just a factual and historical account, we'd love to publish it. I said, no, I'm a storyteller. I want to tell the story, not just say it. So once again, I'm off in search of a publisher. It took me another year or so to finally get connected with Lion Press, who published it. They were very happy with it. After this was already published for some time, I said, hey, we really like what you did on this book, Extraordinary Valor. We'd love to work with you on another project. Do you have any ideas? So I guess I've arrived with a publisher who comes to me and says, would you write a book for us? So that led to this third book, We Dared to Fly. I popped out a couple ideas. One was a fiction novel that I don't know. A non-fiction story. So then I came back to my first tour of flying the Mohawk. There was some good stories there to tell. But my concern, well, both books have classified missions, and my first, Through the Valley, we had been supporting Vietnamese dog. Those missions were very highly classified. So for years, I couldn't say anything about what I did on that tour. Switched over thanks to a guy named John Plastra, who wrote a book, about the SOG missions and got permissions, so that all got declassified. The Mohawk, though, those were secret, some top secret missions, and we could never talk about those. But with the invitation to write another book, I started doing a little bit of research and checking it into my basement. I was coming across unclassified document, classified document after classified document, including on the CIA website. CIA documents were stamped unclassified.
Wow.
So I found that there was material there that I could use. I could finally tell that story, including some of the stuff we did connected to the CIA in Laos, and wrote the manuscript and sent it to the publisher and the book. So that's how I came to write all three books in reverse order. If someone was to start from scratch and wanted to read all three of these as readers' Vietnam trilogy, they should read them exactly the opposite order that I wrote them. Start with the third book, the second, then the first.
Yeah. Well, the book came out awesome. It's an incredible book, and I guess we can jump into it. We read about your arrival at Phubai Airfield, where you're working with the 131st, and the 131st was originally called something else, ESA or something like that.
It was go too deeply into the whole Mohawk history. The Army acquired the aircraft. It was originally a joint Army Marine Corps project. The Marines did the project. The Marine Corps funding with those Mohawk funds to get something else, so the Marine Corps couldn't go with the project anymore. Army got the aircraft. The Army tested the aircraft. Originally, it was designed and intended for use as both a recon surveillance platform and a gun platform. It had the capability to hang a good amount of ordnance on the wing stores on the aircraft. And tests were done in the early 60s at Fort Benning, Georgia, and this concept of air mobility. The Mohawk was included for both recon and strike aircraft. Eventually, the Army started deploying units in Vietnam. The first unit to deploy was 23rd Special Warfare Aviation Detachment, 23rd Squad. We went down to Mung Thao and worked in southern part of Vietnam. They had armed Mohawks that recon and attack. The next unit to go was the 20th Aerial Surveillance Target Acquisition Detachment. It went first into Fang and then eventually moved to Wei Phu. Both the units had successes, both the units had a number of losses. The 20th aspect had the most losses because the division came primarily outside of Vietnam. With all the losses, though, because of the criticality of those days, the Army had to bring their supplying aircraft, replacement aircraft, more crews. By 1960, let me get my dates right, I think it was late 66 sometime, decided this unit needed more capability, so they increased its size from a detachment up to a full-blown aviation company, and the 20th asset of the 131st Surveillance Airplane Company went from 6 aircraft to 15 aircraft with all the crews and support personnel to run that operation.
And that's what you show up into. Let's get into this. You show up there. It says the building was painted in gold, 55-gallon drums, a stacked behind filled with sand, lined the outside, saving open for the entry door in front, 2 exit doors, one on the far side, another onto a small concrete patio out back. The sand-filled barrels were there to provide some protection from the frequent mortar and rocket attacks that pounded the base. Our enemy lurked close by. I stepped through the door to see a couple dozen people standing in front of the bar. These were the pilots not out flying missions that night, along with intel officers and civilian reps supporting the unit. Leaders wore black lights. Others standard doubles and smiled. I saw 3 familiar faces straight ahead. John and Joe Loudermilk, identical twin brothers, Billy Wood. We were flight school classmates. The 3 of us were among the 6 top graduates in our class to go directly into the qualification course to learn to fly the Grumman-built OV-1 Mohawk, the most sophisticated and expensive aircraft in the Army, the airplane I'd now come to Vietnam to fly. The Loudermilks and I had carpooled together every day for the first half of flight school. We were close, good friends. The group faced me in a crescent, my friends in the middle. They sported the biggest grins. John put out his hand. I began began raising mine as I walked toward him. I'd only taken a few steps when everyone began to chant, "He's on the hawk, on the hawk. New guy stepped on the hawk." I heard the bell over the bar ring loudly. "He's buying the bar." I looked down. My feet stood squarely on top of a large black hawk inlaid into the club's tiled floor right in the center of the room. You'd only miss stepping on it if you knew it was there and understood the penalty imposed on all who dared tread upon the sacred image. Or, as I would later learn, were thrown onto it. "Welcome aboard, Wild Bill," John said, laughing. "You're paying for drinks. That's what it costs when you step on the hawk." "Wild Bill?" I inquired. "Yes, Wild Bill. We remember your antics in flight school, so give you that nickname. Everybody's here got a nickname. That one is quite appropriate for you. Okay, Wild Bill it is." So that's your welcome aboard. How rare was it? How awesome was it that you showed up and these buddies that you had from flight school in there?
I never heard of anything else like this in my life. But, first of all, the Army assigning two twin brothers to the same combat unit, that is not supposed to happen, but it did. And it ends up that more guys show up. There were 6 of us in our flight school class, and only 6 of us were selected to go into the Grumman OB-1 Mohawk from our flight school class. Flight school class are around 100 people, something like that. So 6 of us, top grads in the class, we get picked for the Mohawk. We go qualified, training at Fort Rucker, Alabama, training at Fort Washoe, Arizona, off to Vietnam with orders just to Vietnam. Nobody knew where we were going. I had no idea those guys were there. So I get there, 3 of them are already in Fubai, and that's when I just arrived in the story, dropped my stuff in a hooch, walked to the club, and there's those guys. Hey, I'm happy to be okay. Now I'm by the bar. Later on, there's going to be 2 more guys from our flight school class show up. So we had a total of 6 guys from flight school into the Mohawk course, and all of us in the same unit in Vietnam.
There are so many good stories in here. By the book, of course, we're going to cover a little bit of it. Like the nicknames, everyone's got them. So you got sweet and sour, Loudermilk. That's who they were.
Yeah, the guy that was married got sweet. The guy that was single got sour.
Billy Wood was sack rat because I guess he slept a lot.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, a tall major walked over. It's the CEO, a guy by the name of Gary Alton. As John introduced me around, Joe asked, "What are you drinking?" "You're buying." "I'll have a scotch and soda if they have it." Oh yeah, and Major Alton's nickname was Mr. Clean.
Yeah, he was a tall, bald-headed guy. He looked just like Mr. Clean in the yeah.
Back to the drinks here. I'll have a scotch and soda if they have it. How about Chivas Regal? How do you say that? Is that
Chivas Regal? Yeah, that was the response back to me.
Yeah. How about Chivas Regal? It'll cost you all of 25 cents a shot. The cheaper stuff is a nickel less. Chivas it is. The bartender, an off-duty sergeant named Jack Ballet, opened beers and poured drinks. I put $10 on the bar. That would cover things for a while. We drank away the evening. My classmates celebrated my arrival, and I chatted with strangers who would soon become my brothers. It got late. I got drunk. I went to bed. The beautiful prose.
Oh, yeah. Jacques Ballet. I think he was originally a French-Canadian, French, and one of our NCOs. So, yeah, one of our NCOs is in there tending our bar, seeing all the nonsense going on in the officer corps.
Fast forward a little bit. Before you start flying missions, you have to do a checkout.
Yep.
We met the aircraft. I was still in awe every time I looked at the Mohawk. It was unlike any other airplane. It was fast by Army standards. The plane was acrobatic, capable of loops and rolls, and any number of other sleights of aerial ballet. It was strong, able to sustain punishing G-forces, and keep on flying through battle damage that would bring other aircraft out of the sky. The Mohawk was built by Grumman Aircraft, whose Long Island factory was popularly known as the Grumman Iron Works because of its long-standing reputation of building nearly indestructible airplanes, which is normally what they call shipyards, like Bath Iron Works, so Maine. Some said it was not a pretty airplane. They likened it to a bug-eyed pregnant duck. And it is a very beautiful aircraft. It sounded beautiful. I'd seen my first Mohawk here earlier while in flight school in Fort Stewart, Georgia, about 40 miles southwest of Savannah. Fast forward a little bit. One student pilot bragged, "That's what I want to do. I want to be a Mohawk pilot." Last night's sniping jab, "You better worry about graduating from flight school first." The test pilot heard and proclaimed to all, "You are the very best ever given Mohawk pilots." He turned and pointed at the 3 vertical fins of the aircraft. It takes quite a superb engineer to able to handle three pieces of tail so close together. It's a wise crowd about the Mohawk and the Cure. What's the purpose? Why do they have three tails?
The first prototypes were built with just a big single tail. They found they could get better stability with the aircraft with three control surfaces back there, so it's got a simple tail.
I asked the pilot if I could step forward and touch the side of that. That's the thing. He nodded, sure. I walked over, put my hand against his olive drab metal skin. Fell in love.
It's a little corny, but absolutely, positively true. I love that airplane. I had no idea I would fly it on that point, but I saw that and just really fell in love with it.
So you're going through flight school with like 100 people in your flight school, and most of them are going to get helicopters in the Army.
No, this is an interesting time. Back then, this is 1967. The Army had two flight schools. Helicopters were just coming to their fore through the flight school, a fixed-wing flight school and a rotor-wing flight school. I selected for fixed-wing flight school, so we were all just going to be fixed-wing pilots.
That would be like C-130s and cargo aircraft?
No, it would be generally 01 Bird Dogs, which is a small little Cessna two-seater, tandem seat. That was most of the Army aircraft were Bird Dogs. We also had some U-6 Beavers, which I will mention in here. We had one for resupply aircraft, but as I describe in the book, that looked kind of like the Spirit of St. Louis. It's an old big radial engine, propeller airplane. It's got room for a little bit of cargo or something cargo behind the pilots. And then we had that was the U6. I think it was a U1 was Otter. It was just a bigger version of the Beaver, but an old funky high wing built by de Havilland in Canada plane. That was almost. We had a couple larger fixed wings that were on signals intelligence missions. That was at those smaller.
So it's all the little ones.
Okay. All the little ones. The Air Force.
Yeah, the Air Force needs to
Yeah, it's got it. That makes sense.
You're in tech flight, take off, flying around, you know, the operating area, kind of getting figured out. The guy that's taking you on the flight,
But quest.
For, you know, you will only see South Vietnam for takeoffs and landings, don't you? I heard something like that. Yeah, our missions are out over the border into North Vietnam and Laos. We don't have a mission inside South Vietnam. Those are for the four other Mohawk companies. There's one core tactical zone. The battle space in South Vietnam is broken up into four sectors, four core. There's one local company for each of the core. There's us. We flew a bit more. We're the fish company, the district company, the special unit. We're assigned directly to the highest headquarters in the land. That's military assistance in Vietnam. The Intel section owns us, back J2. All our operations are classified as secret. Our mission results are sent not only to headquarters here in the war zone, but also to the Pentagon, State Department, and other national agencies. This is important stuff we're about. Pause before adding, but there's been a cost for what we do. We've had a lot of airplanes shot down, lost too many air crews. Careful. I will. So that's kind of your intro to what you're going to be doing. There's the call sign Spud. Where's the call sign Spud come from? Not sure exactly. Spud is supposed to be some sort of heavy construction tool used on the railroad. That's our official call sign. Spud. We just use Spud on the radio. It's a good call sign. Brief. Easy to understand. You won't find any prouder unit than us. We're all Spuds.
Yeah, and that became a noted call sign. Particularly out over almost everybody, all the Air Force and Army units. Well, the Army didn't fly out there except us, but the Air Force units, everybody, the call sign Spud. Yeah, that was us.
And you guys called each other Spuds, and that was your aircraft. When you were reporting on, it was Spuds.
Yeah, and it still is. I'm still in touch with the Loudermilk, so he'll call me and I'll say, "Hey, Spud."
Hey, what's the name of the bar? The Spud Lounge? What?
It was a Spud Club. Yeah, the Spud. The you were describing it with the gray walls and the 55-gallon drums filled with sand. That was the Spud Club we were talking about. It was our little officers club in our unit area.
Here's another funny one. 3 things to remember. Ed said, "Fubai is all right. The wind never blows. Air always sucks." We got a couple different models of the Mohawk. The Alpha, which is a suite of cameras, for visual recon. It's the one that you actually end up putting weapons on, right?
Yeah, those were by that time, all the other units in Vietnam had lost their armor. Only units left with arms authorized. Some Air Force Army agreement, the Army agreed that we would give up but we kept our armament. So yeah, the A models were armed. We flew 2 aircraft, visual reconnaissance, photographic missions out over the Ho Chi Minh Trail during daylight hours. Took a lot of fire. The A models and visual reconnaissance were there. So lost most of the aircraft. Most of the pilots were lost out of that.
The Bravo is the side-looking airborne radar, SLAR, right? And then the last one is an IR infrared equipment. So it's the Alpha Bravo Charlie. Those are the different aircrafts that you're flying. And as you mentioned, the visual recon one, which is the ones that are armed, that's the most dangerous mission. Daytime and close combat. Yep, striking people on the ground. So you don't get to do that out of the gate, which you learn. You gotta get some experience before you go to that role.
Yeah, that was our most experienced pilots flew, but our most experienced and those that had the mindset to do it. There were a lot of pilots who wanted nothing to do with FDR mission. The side-looking airborne radar, which looked out to the side for 10, 15, up to about 30 miles out, would pick up anything along a road, highway, or trail going more than 3 miles an hour. It was valuable information. They flew that mission at 5,000 feet APL above the ground, so that was a little bit safer altitude to operate at.
Quite a ways away from the target that they're...
Yeah, because they ride along the coast of North Vietnam. Though we did lose one of those aircraft for SAM missile and the crew was lost. The C models were dicey missions, but it was a nighttime infrared. Had to fly below 2,000, roughly about 1,000 feet or lower above the ground over miles. Now it's in lost two aircraft on the red up there. But it's a long time for lost flight.
Fast forward a little bit. I did my first tactical mission after my new-guy checkout was in. So 1-day checkout, and
You're by yourself and a second pilot and enlisted observer in the right seat.
I was assigned to side-looking airborne radar operations paired me with our most experienced SLAR operator specialist, Fish. Okay, that's normal. Specialist 5 is Spec 5, right? Spec 5. On the right side, McCarthy got that name because of his tall, slender appearance. Our enlisted right-seaters earned the military specialty of an airborne system operator, referred to them all as those technical observers. They trained to operate all 3 Mohawk systems, side-looking airborne, infrared, visual reconnaissance, specializing in one specific system after arrival in the 131st, some able to manage 2. Fast forward a little bit. These guys, some of the aircrafts had controls on both sides, right? Which one had the controls on both sides?
A models.
Okay, so only
Just the daytime visual photo reconnaissance missions.
And how much did you let these guys? Did you let your TOs fly very much?
Yeah, I let them fly a bit because we want them to be able to at least fly the aircraft, not land the aircraft. But if the pilot got wounded, I don't know that this ever happened.
Yeah.
This was our attitude.
I would think so.
If the pilot gets wounded, you can at least take the controls and fly that aircraft in Phu Bai, somewhere over the airfields at Phu Bai, point the aircraft towards the water, which is very close, and eject, get out of it.
Is it that hard to land one of those things?
It's a tricycle gear, so it's not that hard. The bird with conventional gear is more difficult. It's not that. I mean, there's some things you have to go through to know what you're doing. But for a pilot, an experienced pilot, the Mohawk's not particularly difficult.
So it's safer to eject for a guy that's like a TO. It's safer for him.
I would want to. I don't think I'd want to have the TOs land the.
That's interesting to me. It always seems to me like eject is such a last worst case scenario.
It is, but we never, for whatever reason, I mean, probably particularly it'd be absolutely illegal to do it, to let them actually land the aircraft, to practice landing the aircraft, so you do it. I never did that with the TO.
Interesting. Fast forward a little bit. Once I took off, all I had to do was check in with the combat aircraft controller, call sign Waterboy, climb to 5,500 feet, switch on the autopilot, and turn to whatever heading McCarthy directed. We flew along North Vietnamese coast to our assigned turnaround point, largest city central of North Vietnam and almost halfway to the communist capital, Hanoi. The United States places critical importance on our North Vietnam slaughter missions. Only days before my arrival in Chu Mai, President Johnson declared a bombing halt in all North Vietnam. That was on October 31st, 1968. He hoped to energize peace talks. No one flew in the airspace after that. Only us, as far as I knew, alone, unarmed, scared shitless.
That's a recon pilot's motto.
Fast forward a little bit, more missions followed. We became the principal source of intelligence to track North Vietnamese convoy movements. They pushed men, supplies, equipment southward toward the dry zone, across Key Mountain Pass to Laos, onto the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You're on one of these things. Fast forward a little bit. A rattlesnake-sounding audio alert. So you're flying. You're doing a mission. At the same time, a dashed strobe appeared on the scope. One of the blocks on the rectangular box lit up. I sat straight up. McCarthy, his eyes to the ECM. "Did you know the drill?" he asked. I remembered back to my training flights in the Mohawk course at Fort Rucker. My instructor pilot crammed so much into my head that I started so that I might survive my combat tour in Vietnam. It was tough. Times his intentions were always clear, though. The best pilot I could mold me to what I needed to live through a tour with the 131st. Should I be assigned there? The procedures and flight skills in my mind and muscle memory drilled me over and over again. It served in near the risks, but he loved the spuds. He spoke so reverently of the unit classified mission that there was no doubt that's where I wanted to go. I sought assignment to the 131st because of Max. Now I was there. Yes, I remembered the drill. Max had described escalating series of warnings. First, a dash strobe with a rattling sound and a yellow warning light on the box. Yellow warning light tracked by radar. That's got to be a solid strobe with a continuous tone, orange warning light on the box. That orange warning light locked their missile to the radar track, ready to fire. Finally, the bold, solid strobe with a screaming tone and red warning lights on the box. They'd launched a SAM. It was coming at you. If the ECM went through the sequence, showed a launch, the drill was to immediately push the stick down and dive in the direction of the strobe, go straight toward the missile that was coming for you at as much speed as possible. Strain your eyes, looking ahead, searching for the telephone pole-sized object hurtling toward you to blow you to pieces at night, hoping to see the propellant flame at its tail. The instant you saw the thing, roll left and pull back hard on the stick, making the highest G-turn you could bear. The theory was that the missile could not match the tight turn and would tumble harmlessly out of control and crash to the earth. Our strobe stayed dashed, the warning lights didn't advance, the sound never went beyond a rattle. In a few minutes, all fell silent again. No missile launch. I relaxed and lit a cigarette. Specialist McCarthy approached and brought it along. Took a sip. He breathed deeply and said, "You know we had a crew shot down here a while back." No, I didn't. I heard several 131st crews have been lost, but nothing specifically about a route pack mission. It was about 2 years ago, right off the city of Vinh, Lieutenant Jimmy Brasher and Bobby Pittman had flown the same track as us, but a late-night mission. Waterboy saw several missiles fired in the area, announced warnings on guard, called Spud 09, Brasher. No reply. Never found the aircraft or the crew. A SAM missile got him right here.
Yeah. Those were a dicey few moments. I mean, that was the first time that I experienced that radar warning system come on, and definitely makes you sit up straight in your seat. Old McCarthy over there, he'd been through it a few times, so he just, as I said there, took a sip of his coat and made that comment. We later find out that we frequently got radars locking on us up off the North Vietnamese coast. Only rarely did it go on just a track, but occasionally it did, and we had lost that crew up there. And that sounds exciting, and it was. But I think we get into it. That mission became one of the most boring missions I ever flew, because you'd fly for 4 hours plus just making tracks up off the coast of North Vietnam, but getting some essential intelligence off of the traffic activity that was taking place up there. But the TO would keep track from his system. He could see, he got a depiction in the cockpit of where you were and where the movers were. And so he'd give you the navigation, the heading information. You just follow his commands and sit there and smoke cigarettes and drink Cokes for 4 hours plus, and then go slam back and through by. And that Martin Baker MK5 ejection seat was hard as a rock. Oh, God.
Jack, fast forward that night, like most, I spent this book. Fast forward a little. Well, you popped your cherry. You're now officially 131st Combat Aviator